Hello, and thank you for joining us today for Manuscript to Market, Speeding Up the Journey. I'm Nicole Tomasi, Marketing and Conference Manager for Westchester Publishing Services. As the webinar gets underway, please note that attendee microphones will be muted for the entire session. If you have questions for the panelists, please enter them in the Q&A section of the control bar, and we'll cover as many as time permits. This is the latest session of our long-standing Publishing Now webinar series, conducted in partnership with Publishers Weekly. In addition to collaborating with PW, we actively participate in many industry organizations, including the Book Industry Study Group, which is unique among these groups shown on the screen, with their primary focus on helping advance the needs of the entire publishing industry. Whether you're a publisher, nonprofit, library, agent, or freelancer, BISG membership is a worthwhile investment to consider. Westchester's partnerships with PW and BISG have provided us with deeper knowledge about what is happening across all sectors of publishing and allowed us to build strong relationships with respected thought leaders, including today's panelists, Matt Cannell, current BISG Board of Directors Chair, Marina Padakis Lowry of Zando, and Nina von Moltke from Authors Equity. You'll be hearing from them in a few minutes, but first, it's my pleasure to turn the microphone over to our moderator, Jim Milliot, Editor-at-Large for Publishers Weekly, who will provide a general overview of where publishing is in the final months of 2025.
Great, thanks, Nicole. Good to be back with everybody. This is our, I don't know, fifth, sixth, or seventh webinar we've done with Westchester, and they've all been, I think, very informative. Had a lot of good feedback. So hopefully we'll have the same here. So as Nicole said, I'm going to start off with a couple of quick comments about where the industry is, then do another brief introduction of our panelists. I'll do it all up front so we can have handovers once we get going. They'll have about 10 minutes to state their case, and then we'll have time for Q&A. You can send some in Q&A here live. We had a lot of good ones come in ahead of time, so should be plenty of things to discuss. So in November, early November, where is publishing? Could be better. AAP's sales numbers came out late last week, showed the industry down about 3% through August. I think those numbers are a little misleading in that it looks like when you break down the segments, sales are down even more. Um, Fiction, for instance, which has been driving a lot of the sale the last couple of years, particularly through romanticy and that sort of stuff, was off about 5.5% through August. Nonfiction, which we all know has been having its own troubles, down about 8%. Children's is down about 4%. Religion, which was doing really well, maybe a bit of a correction here, is down about 10%. And professionals down about 10%. Bright spot is nonfiction, children's up about 4.5%. And if you look at format, you might get an idea about why things have cooled. I think everybody here knows digital audio was a huge driver for 16 months or so following Spotify's entrance. Now they're just sort of lapping each other, so the sales aren't new addition. And so digital audio was only up about 0.6%. Ebook about up the same. Trade papers down about 10%, and hardcovers down about 3%. And trade paper could reflect maybe a little bit of cooling of a decorative cover phase. I think we need a little more investigation to see if that's the case or not. And these numbers are somewhat in line with BookScan, whose numbers, are just units, not dollars, but are much more up to date. Through the third quarter, they had units down about 1%, and the trends are pretty much the same. Particularly if you're in the trade segment, uh, adult fiction is down from the peaks of the last few years. So along with that, we've had some challenges going for independent publishers. And try to get some economies of scale. We've had companies like the Stable Group form, which combine a number of different companies into one group to try to get some better leverage there. We've had a couple of companies go out of business. Just last week, Mango Publishing, which had been around for about 15 years, closed its doors. Um, and then we've had Baker and Taylor, of course, go out of business. I don't think anybody was surprised that Baker and Taylor's finances might have been shaky, but I think they were surprised about how quickly things, totally unraveled. So it's going to take another couple of months before I think the dust completely settles and the library market gets back to anything close to resembling the norm. So, having laid out that happy scenario, it'll be my pleasure here to introduce people who are going to offer up uh, not some answers, but maybe some suggestions. And first up is going to be Matt Cannell. Matt is Director of Sales at the Versa Press. He's the fourth generation to work there. And in his position, he works at the cross section of book publishing and book manufacturing. He's also charged of the ERP system. And as I believe Nicole mentioned, he's newly named as chairman of BISG. He'll be followed by Marina Padakis Lowry. She currently is Director of Publishing Operations at Zandu. Before that, she was at Union Square. She worked at a lot of other major publishers, including HMH Books and HarperCollins. Third up will be Nina Van Mocha. Um, she's most recently more importantly, she's currently a co-founder and president of Authors Equity. Before that, she was senior president over at PRH, where she was head of strategic development, looking at some cross-functional teams. And so as I said, once we turn it over to Matt here in a second, we'll just go from Matt to Marina to Nina. So, Matt, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. I'm really glad to be here. Thanks, Jim, for the introduction. I'm excited to kick off the speeding up the publishing journey. I really feel this topic is timely. At Book Industry Study Group's annual meeting last April, the theme was move fast and fix things. And that wasn't just a slogan, it was a call to overhaul the operational plumbing of our industry. We learned a lot through the pandemic, the shocks of 2020 and through 2022, which was really a super cycle of book sales, and then the inevitable inventory whiplash that followed. And I think the through line is pretty clear that speed without resilience is brittle, and that resilience without speed is expensive, and that our industry really needs both. So speed to market today, in my as I look at things, I look at it as not just being an editorial and a marketing ambition, it's a full supply chain discipline. So how files move from editorial to production, how orders, metadata, and purchase orders transact across partners, all of that can either shorten or lengthen the journey from author to reader. And now we're doing that in artificial intelligence, large language model era. And I think that will reward standards, transparency, and clean data. And BISG's role is crucial here. When the ecosystem shares standards, the whole system can speed up. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit. So at Versa Press, we print for about 700 customers annually, and it really gives me a front row seat to what actually accelerates and what can quietly slow a title. We see publishers who consistently hit their file dates and land books exactly when marketing needs them, but we also, on the other hand, see teams who fight the same fires every season. So I want to break it out into kind of four habits that we've observed between these two groups. It's not heroics, it's habits. These fast publishers share these four behaviors: workflow optimization, standardization, transparency with suppliers, and attacking the timeline or breaking bottlenecks. So in that first habit, workflow optimization, it's about making the work visible. Speed really begins where friction hides, and that's in the handoffs. So the fastest teams map their workflow from manuscript acceptance through release, and then they work to remove wait states and rework. So 3 practical moves to consider. One would be having a single source of truth for specs and metadata. So you have one authoritative record that your teams and suppliers reference. And then that way you don't have conflicting PDFs or a version 17 -final. Second would be automating file checks so that production only sees 10 to 15% of files that really need eyes on them. We see a lot of publishers that have moved over to doing soft proofs, and some publishers that are going without proofs altogether. Third would be to parallelize your workflows early, and by putting those things in parallel. For example, while editorial's finishing, if you can lock in the trim size family, some of what the paper might be, and the binding early in that process, that way purchasing and scheduling can move in parallel and everything's not moving in sequence. The second habit, standardization, and I think this is really critical because it allows not just for speed or one-offs, but you're trying to create speed at scale and have that be repeatable. So the word standardization is not all rigidity. I think it's how you move fast and how you can keep quality within the system. So some of the winners we see will use trim families and common specs that, different titles fall within. The more your front list lands within kind of pre-approved configurations with your print partner, the better. And that way we're not reinventing the wheel, which can sometimes save weeks, not just days. Maintaining kind of template libraries for interiors and covers, so that design decisions aren't resetting to 0 each season. And one of the biggest things I think is really adopting data standards downstream. So having clean Onyx files, consistent carton labels, predictable ASNs, exceptions is what really adds extra time. The third habit is transparency, and it helps your printer to be prepared. So I would encourage you to share your title lists, pub months, and demand signals with suppliers earlier than you might think is safe. It's not a commitment. It's more of a communication tool so that we know what's coming down the pike. It gives us a horizon on, and if we can have a 90 or a 3 to 6 month horizon, we can then, be monitoring what's likely to move and what titles you plan to send to press. And then we update that over time with a lot of our customers. And that really lets your printer ensure that they have the paper and the press capacity for your titles and to be prepared for when a crash title or a rush reprint crops up. And so in general, my advice here is don't wait until you're desperate to practice good habits, but developing and training your systems within a calm environment is fruitful, and then that way it performs under pressure. The fourth one, break the bottlenecks. So one thing that we've asked our team here at VersaPress are, what are the 3 slowest steps that we expect or that we see often, and then break those steps. So here's some examples that are working today. Having decision ladders, pre-authorizing common substitutions, paper trim sizes within a family, up to a set cost or a quality threshold, so you're not stalled waiting for approvals. Having fast lanes with your printers, defining a subset of specs that qualify for a guaranteed quick turn window with your printer. Also 24-hour proof cycles. The pace, if you can commit to next day proof decisions internally, I think you'll find that printers can match your pace if you match theirs. And finally, pre-cleared packaging and routing. So if we're waiting for shipping information for drop shipments or that sort of thing, which can help get books where they need to the consumer quicker, having some of that information earlier in the process saves headaches at the end. So the technology mix that enables agility. So inside a printing plant like Versa's, the last 5 years have transformed the flow of materials. So today we blend both high quality digital with offset printing to right size runs across the life of a title. And I don't think the point is all digital or print on demand or all offset. It's fit for purpose. So digital gives you the ability or the agility on late breaking titles where demand's spiking. And it also helps with versioning. Whereas offset gives you scale economies when your forecasts firm up. The capability you want from your printer is simple. Any trim size, anytime within your standardized product families. And when your specs are predictable, make-readies are less of an issue, and we can move your book through the production process at breakneck speed. And, diversity of print suppliers, I think, is, something that during the pandemic people were looking at, and there's value to that. But I just wanted to point, kind of call attention to, unless you're a really large publisher and you have a lot of titles, it's not going to provide you with the same production flexibility and speed that are possible when you lock into 1 or 2 print partners that they can offer you. When you have all your titles, when you have most of your titles at a printer, you can jump to the front of the line because you already have other titles in the pipeline with your printer. So you'll often see larger publishers swap titles out to fit a rush reprint in and get it right to the front of the line. And you may have pre-scheduled new titles whose capacity we'll swap out new title capacity for reprints for customers as well. So don't just hope that your printer can help you speed up a title. I'd really encourage you to create partnerships and a sourcing strategy that's planned out and makes speeding up the time to get inventory in the market readily achievable when you need it. And just kind of in wrapping up, I think that readers have kind of changed too. And I'm excited to hear from some of our other panelists and how they're meeting authors and readers. But yeah, the pandemic really exposed some of our weak points, but it also accelerated how readers discover books. So book talk is shorthand for a broader truth. Consumer signals can spike fast and late, as we all know. You don't control a spark, but you can control your readiness. So if marketing lights a fire, can ops deliver in weeks and not months? Your answer, I think, depends on some of the habits that I covered. I also look on a broader perspective at BISG, kind of this idea of moving from things being in silos to operating within workflows and systems. So when markets are siloed, I think we keep doing things the way we've always done them because no one has shown us a better shared way. And that's why BISG launched Book Publishing Next to connect the silos and modernize the roads and bridges of our supply chain. So some of the priorities on my list to be looking at are modernizing transactions. So purchase orders, ASNs, invoicing, so data doesn't have to get retyped 3 times. Also tightening up metadata hygiene end-to-end. Messy metadata adds time and issues everywhere. Also capacity signals between publishers, printers, and distributors, so we can all plan and have visibility across the supply chain. And then with AI and large language model, having guardrails and standards so that we can take advantage of tools that help us move faster without fragmenting data or rights. So in closing, the printing press is only 575 years old and writing and paper are even older. And I think we're all still here and the industry still where we're at today because we've adapted whenever it mattered. The pandemic is over and paper and press delays have eased, but the vulnerabilities and opportunities it revealed are still with us. So I don't think speeding up is just a fad, but it's going to be a discipline that will help us serve readers quickly, effectively, and at scale. With that, I'll turn it over to Marina.
All right, great. Thanks, Matt. Marina, it's all yours.
I'm Marina Padakis Lowry, and I've been in publishing for more than 25 years now, which is a little bit of a shock when I sat and counted. I came up in production, editorial, and managing ed, and I'm now the director of operations at Zando, where I oversee both of those departments as well as production and publishing operations. So all those somewhat invisible departments that keep the train on the tracks in the background. I'm going to speak to you today on two topics. First, the value proposition, and these are those things that you really should consider before even pulling the trigger on that speed to market project. Second, I'm going to address some strategies for your editorial production teams. You know, having come up in that area, these are things that I've learned over the years that can be very helpful to your teams. And these guys are arguably your most important allies in getting the book from manuscript to final files on a tight timeline. So let's begin with that value proposition. So why do we do speed to market titles at all? So we can quickly pivot and capitalize on relevant current events, developing trends and viral hits, and in-demand high-profile authors, you know, getting that next book out there really quickly. It's also a tool to just get a faster return on our investment, or quite commonly make up for gaps in our budget. You see it all the time. And you know, when publishers are able to do this well, they can really boost their reputation for relevance and agility, and the market will look to you for the next big thing, which is great. But we'll step back a moment and take a look at some of the current considerations for decision makers. As we all know, drop-ins are often a gamble, so let's try to mitigate some of the common risks. A few things to think about now before you saying yes. First, buy-in. You need to confirm that your author, agent, and editor are on board and will comply with your crash schedule in the first place. Get it in writing. Late delivery will have your project dead in the water before it even starts. Next, we have the iron triangle. And we're all familiar with some version of this graphic. I have it up there on the screen. Quality, speed, and cost. In order to have two of those things, you generally have to make a sacrifice on the third. So, for example, if you want low cost and quality, it will take more time. If you want speed and quality, it will likely cost more to produce. And that one is the point that I'm emphasizing here. Quality takes time and effort. So when you are on a tight schedule, it will be costly. If your P&L cannot bear extra plate costs for these special projects, you should be rethinking. So it's a common practice with these kinds of titles to bring editorial production in-house entirely to save on costs. However, I do encourage a more balanced approach with speed to market titles, using external resources strategically, and I'll give you a few more details on that in a moment. Set that team up for success, allow them that additional budget and some helpers. You get what you pay for. It is a drop in the bucket in the big picture of things. This is not a place to nickel and dime. The reality is, given that service departments like managing ed and production ed are smaller than ever and generally have a heavy workload already, your in-house team can only absorb so much extra work before other projects and morale start to suffer. So these folks are your greatest allies in making this work. Trust in them and treat them well and give them what they need to succeed. Now, another point is lead time. So crash schedules mean that you are missing key moments in the typical selling cycle. Do your sales, marketing, and publicity teams have enough materials and runway to make this a success? Do you have a pre-order campaign and an online marketing plan? Ensure your visibility strategy is aligned with that reduced timeline. And the other point to think about is current market forces. As Matt touched on, retailers like Amazon and Barnes and Noble have adjusted their ordering practices. Retailers are ordering lower quantities and only enough to keep a few weeks of stock on hand. The days of stocking up and ordering long are over, folks. So larger retailers have also been returning stock more quickly, sometimes within a few weeks of on sale. Weeks, not months. So if you're coming in late in the game without those pre-orders and a marketing plan, they may not bite at all. And also consider your format. They are more likely to take a gamble on a paperback than a hardcover. So ensure your team has considered all of these things before pressing go. A single misstep on any of them could mean all your efforts are for naught. All right, so let's turn to the next slide for the editorial production process. Look at this lovely slide AI made for me. I'll walk you through some helpful best practices step by step, especially for managing ed and production editorial professionals. So right at the inception of this Speed to Market project, assign a crash team to the project. This will generally be led by your managing editor, and the team should include everyone attached to the project: production editor, designer, editor, production, sales, marketing, publicity. The first meeting will be to set a custom-built schedule and assign tasks to the team. And you'll then meet on a regular basis, weekly, or even more frequently if needed, depending on the length of the schedule, until that project goes to print. The team lead should send out follow-up notes with action items from each meeting and send reminders ahead of key dates. This helps ensure that all milestones are met and everyone is held accountable. And I'll note that this should be separate from your regular production meeting. This is a focused team check-in, 15 minutes. Some considerations for the schedule. So a crash schedule generally has fewer steps rather than all of the typical steps, but compressed. Most of the time when you are on a crash schedule, you do not have time to do all of the steps. But what steps can you cut or reduce? Obviously, it will depend on the needs of the project. It may be rounds of proofreading that have to be sacrificed. You may have to go into pages before the copy edit. Nobody's favorite thing to do, but sometimes it needs to be done. Sometimes you get a manuscript in great condition from the editor. You may have to skip color proofing of the cover. And, as Matt touched on, also skip some of the proofing process. Maybe you're only doing soft proofs instead of seeing hard proofs. Managing ed should negotiate this with the team from the start, and I'll talk about a few more time savers in a moment. So further to that schedule, ensure you are including padding in that schedule, even if it's only a few days. Remember, the real schedule is nobody's business but that of managing ed and production. You don't need to tell everyone what the real end date is. Keep that time to yourself. And then the cover, we want to prioritize that cover. We all know how long it takes to get a cover right. That cover brief should be in right at the inception of the project so design can get grooving on it. Your selling teams are going to need that cover almost more than anything else. And the galleys, so in general, galleys are still one of our strongest selling materials. Speed to market means either no galley or a late galley. So maybe you want to consider alternatives to the print galley. Go e-galley only, maybe do a bound manuscript of an earlier pass before first pass, or consider a sampler of several chapters, or even a blad for illustrated titles. If a print galley is a must, consider some smaller scale printers for faster turnaround. They are happy for your business and will work with you on timing. We even have a vendor who can do galleys for us in days. So look for those smaller printers for that. Then, very importantly, lock down your page count and your specs by first pass. Ensure all the decisions are made by this time. You need to be getting your paper quantity. You need to, hopefully have your first print quantity by this time. You need to get your templates in. All of these things need to be settled at that earlier time. Often we'll put that off until second pass, third pass. You need to do it now. Now, once that schedule is fully set, The next step is to pre-schedule all the external tasks. You want to lock down your copy editor, your proofreader, designer, comp, and printers for the dates you need. Make sure that you're doing that and that everyone knows and it's all on paper. And speaking of your freelancers, if you're consistently doing speed to market titles, it's really important to cultivate a group of freelancers who do tight, accurate turnarounds for you. Ensure your rush rates are enough to keep them interested. These folks may not be your best and brightest, but this matters less when you have deadlines to meet. So reliable is the name of the game here. And a very important note, fellow managing editors and production editors, ask for the help you need. You should not have to do this by yourself. You already have enough on your plate. I have been in your shoes, and I know how hard it can be to juggle so many things. As I mentioned earlier, the publisher should expect to spend more on services for speed to market, whether for this project or perhaps its assistance with existing titles that are in production, while your team addresses the crash project. Now, I appreciate that budget is a pain point for most publishers, especially smaller ones. But in reality, it is not a lot of money when compared to the overall title budget when you're looking at plate. Extra freelance help will not break the P&L. Ask for the help you need to make it work. I have not once had a publisher who said no to a reasonable request. And here are a couple of other things that will help you to get to the finish line faster. These are for a variety of budgets, so stick with me here. Number one, use a packager or a composition house. This tends to be a little bit of a higher priced item here, but save that wear and tear on your team by outsourcing some or even all of the production editorial work. This could range from full packaging services, just taking the manuscript all the way through to final files, to perhaps just portions of the process, like overseeing the copy editing and proofreading. Most comp houses will offer a menu of a la carte options to suit many needs and budgets. So I do encourage you to reach out to your vendors to see what's available to you. For example, our hosts today, Westchester Publishing, offer a lot of services at many different price points. I've had great luck with them in the past, and I was not paid to say that. And another possibility for you, particularly if you are doing things like cookbooks and complex illustrated projects, is using an individual freelance vendor for design and or composition, especially on super crash schedules. Engaging an individual for this can often turn things around more quickly than in-house resources or larger comps. Especially when you have, locked out their time for this. This one extra individual can often be the single factor that will make that reduced schedule possible. And another thing that you can do is to hire your existing editorial freelancers to do some of the time-consuming or tedious tasks for your team, either on existing projects or on your speed to market. This can take pressure off your in-house team. Many of these individuals currently work as production or managing editors, and they can be extremely helpful to you. They can help your team merge corrections, clean up copy-edited manuscripts, text coding, just all of those tasks that take a lot of time. I frequently have freelancers reaching out to me looking for work. So use these resources you already have for different things. They will help you get to the finish line. And then layer tasks. When I say layer tasks, what I mean is that given those tight turnarounds, you often don't have time for, say, multiple proofreads, right? Frequently, what I will do is I have found it effective to have 2 simultaneous proofreaders, which can then reduce the need for a full read in later passes. You're bound to miss things when you're reading quickly, and this is an effective way to ensure things don't fall through the cracks. And there are other things out there that are completely free. You know, there are AI powered tools like Grammarly, and they can assist with proofreading in those final stages when you're really hurrying to wrap up and get the thing out the door. These tools can help you ensure that simple spelling and grammar errors that are quite embarrassing are not left behind. So, you know, avail yourself of those things. Nearly all of them are free. And, you know, I encourage you to recycle. There is no need to reinvent the wheel on many projects. So, for example, use those existing InDesign templates that you have for the galley and even for the text design. Never once will anyone say, "Oh, I saw that text design on another book." You will never hear that. Go ahead and use that same font. Go ahead and use that same interior design. You know, no need to reinvent the wheel. You know, this can really save some time and perhaps even freelance fees. And just remember, managing editors, it is up to you to help keep your team's morale high by not forcing them to absorb all of the considerations of the rush themselves. Ask for that help you all need to get the project done without overwhelming your team and driving everybody else at the publisher crazy. This will help reduce your stress and your team will love you for it. So thank you very much, and I'll be happy to answer any questions later on. And next you'll hear from Nina.
Yeah, so the Marina has laid out that process so beautifully, and a lot of the things I would totally subscribe. Jack, I co-founded Authors Equity 2 years ago, along with Matt and McIntosh and Don Weisberg. And all three of us came from Random House and Macmillan. We had big scale, thousands of titles, lots of experts, and very established processes in place. And we went to a new publisher that had no title. We had to figure out everything. So we didn't have any processes in place initially, and had also not really set in an expectation of timeline. So we had a book from contract to in market in 3 months. Others took longer. We were really working around the authors. Our model is very author-centric and involves the authors and along the way, at every step of the way. So we, as we grew, obviously, we were forced to get a little bit more disciplined and set expectations for ourselves and the authors, and come up with a process that worked really well. So we outsourced pre-press completely, worked with some vendors just because we were too small a team to handle that. And that was a great experience, and we had timelines in place, and that was, as Marina said, mainly a decision of how many passes do you do. But that's a relatively established process. We usually work with about a 11 or 12 week window, copy, edit, typeset, all the way from manuscript to print ready. And one thing that we found is involving the author. So in our case, everything comes down to communication, both internally and with the authors. So the two key steps we put in place that were helpful is that we introduced a project management software. We're using Asana, which really helps all the team track all the different elements. We have an internal meeting that we call Nuts and Bolts meeting, where we define all these decisions that Matt and Marina also mentioned up front, all the specs, paper quality, that's all set essentially before we launch into pre-press. So we try to move that up very early, and again, have the author involved in that, so we know we can move ahead. So I think those were the two big steps that allowed us to have a clear timeline and also move fast when we need to move fast. And at least be clear with the authors of what we expect in terms of turnaround. Again, in our case, the authors are able to review their copy, edit it, proof, because we are very much making them part of the team. And so that communication around turnaround times for the review is just as essential as working with the vendors on the timeline. So that's in our case really still in growth mode as we're expanding the list. We went from 1 title a year ago to about 20 over this past year, and then ramping up from here. but we're not yet in a place of full scale. So we're still operating at a more custom level, I would say. And the one thing just from my end, where like Marina covered the production side so well, but more from a publishing end, I would say really questioning whether speed is important from a audience building side for us is really the key question, because a lot of the timelines are not really dictated by production. We actually shifted that around. Initially, we had the production schedule dictate sort of the on sale time. We turned that around completely to say, what is the best time for the book? Which books benefit from quick to market? Which other ones really need the breathing room to build time for galleys to be read, for us to build audience and excitement for the book, even if the book could be ready. So we're really prioritizing that and fitting the production into that in that way around, because a lot of the limitations of speed to market come from the retailers selling and planning for their inventory space, needing the books in their distribution centers 4 weeks before on sale date and things like that. And so if you want to really get that right, which oftentimes is more important than having the book just out there, that is certainly something that we learned needed to be prioritized, and then in conversation again with the authors to make sure we're all aligned and give the book the best chance to succeed in terms of finding readers and finding an audience and having the retailers on board. And again, that can be different for a book that needs a lot of retail support to one where maybe it's a conversion from a self-published book. In those cases, it's a little bit different. And in those cases, we do move much faster, because the audience has already proven itself, and it's a book that will translate from online to retail, most likely. So in those cases, we move much faster because we do a structural edit, we have it tight, and then we can move. Sometimes even with audio first, we're experimenting with that if the book is already out there, so it doesn't have to be such a coordinated approach. But just in summary, our model is a little different in the sense of really author focused. We're really customizing the timeline for the author, prioritizing the audience building piece and the retail positioning piece, and then retrofitting the scheduling. We do have maybe one last piece with in our case the authors that has helped a lot, a overview of the process outline, so that they understand all the steps, because it is very complex to make a book and not everyone understands that. So again, communication for us is the key. And with that, I'm going to turn it over back to Jim.
All right, thanks very much, Nina. Got quite a few questions here, some overall themes. One of the submitted questions was, has anybody considered going more direct to consumer? And I think that sort of ties in with things like the market. Traditional customers seem to be, as we just said, not buying as many copies. So how do you feel about that? And I'm not so much thinking direct to consumer, though we certainly can address that. But where are the alternatives besides Amazon and Barnes and Noble now? I mean, there's such concentration among the big retailers out there. You know, how can you work your way around that?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, we like, certainly TikTok Shop is an avenue that we're experimenting with. I would say the direct to consumer path is still one that is hard to make it the top one, but certainly also one that I believe is important to pursue. It depends though if the authors have reach, like where do you go from direct to consumer? It's usually not the publishers' sites that get the most traffic where people look for books. So in our case, we are working with the authors that have platforms to either drive TikTok Shop, and that is, you know, still one that is evolving fast and in terms of understanding what's driving volume, but one that we feel is really important to learn. Another thing that we have been doing successfully, I know some others too, is on audio. working with supporting cast. They have a really great integration to have audio use a podcast player, actually, so you don't need to download your own app, and it's a direct transaction to the consumer. Again, it's never going to be the majority volume. I do think it's still, you do, for a book to be successful, you have to prioritize the big retailers. I mean, without Amazon and Barnes and Noble, you can't make a book. But you can supplement, I think, with avenues to find fans maybe in different areas that may not find the book on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. I don't know if that answers the question, but
No,
that's
I think
certainly.
that's helpful. Marina, what's your view on that?
Well, as far as any direct to consumer, now Zando, where I am now, we are a client publisher of PRH. So, we are limited obviously in where we can sell because it's, where PRH sells. But in the past, I have seen attempts for direct to consumer, and really, I think that the best thing that most publishers, because they lack the infrastructure or just, any kind of way to really do any direct to consumer, the best thing you can do is really build up your marketing efforts, your publicity efforts, and find those readers where they are. Be on TikTok, be on all of the social media channels so you can get them there and have your link up so they can click on right on through, ready to go and buy that book as soon as they see it and they want it. So that is my suggestion.
Okay. Now, Zando's had a lot of success, as I think both you and Nina suggested, in taking authors that had done well in digital or audio and put them in print. Is that a strategy you think you're going to continue, and does that change the way you operate?
I don't know if I would say it's necessarily a strategy, but it's certainly something that we have done successfully with authors like Bryn Weaver and Nevessa Allen. They are big bestsellers, and we're absolutely delighted to have them on our list. And yeah, Zando did manage to build them into the authors they are now. Yeah, I would not necessarily call it our strategy, but it's a piece of what we do. Yes.
Right. Okay. Um, okay, Matt. So we were yesterday at the Book Manufacturers Institute conference, and EUDR did come up. You just want to kind of fill us in on where that stands?
Yeah, so yeah, paper mills have been working on getting their geocoordinate data, and I think different printers are at different steps along the timeline of being able to offer EUDR compliant paper. But we're working with our paper mills and starting to put things on the platform. We're using a third-party provider, Osapiens, along working with our IT team to implement that. The biggest headache to it is that it seems to be changing here at the last minute, and so we're kind of having to adjust at a later stage in the process than we'd like to, but we're still on track to get there by the end of the year.
So where do you think publishers need to be right now? I mean, I remember yesterday, some of the paper suppliers said they're ready to go. So do publishers sort of need to be ready to go?
Yeah, I would definitely suggest that publishers understand, downstream from the manufacturer, who that partner is that's, responsible for putting their books on the EU market, and being prepared to receive those DDS statements, and how that, communicating upstream with us, where that information's going. So we're going to be we're going to be tracking from a roll and saying, okay, here's, this paper was used in this batch of books, and passing that on to the publisher. But certainly working with your downstream partners, I think, is what they should be focusing on and making sure they're ready for.
All right, it didn't come up too much in anybody's prepared remarks, but there is a question. How are you using AI? You can be as specific as possible if you want, or just general. And my experience has been publishers are still moving pretty slowly in it and trying to figure out the best way.
Yeah, I mean, for the production process specifically, we have experimented with one company called Editrix. So they understand the editorial tool that is copy, edit, turnable, and may use it for certain projects. I think it, again, like it still is in our case book by book, because some books really just need that you want the higher quality standard and the review. But others maybe on Chicago, style 100% all the time. I want these commas to stay there. Then we can maybe circumvent that a little bit. So I think it's going to evolve rapidly. This is the first test we're using, but it still needs review. There's still someone reviewing the file. You can't. I mean, there was actually a really funny anecdote that Madeline shared the other day in the Wall Street Journal, where a name was altered. A last name was Holland, and it was altered to the Netherlands. So you can, you can have, you can't really rely on it entirely without applying human review, and then it can only go so far.
Right, sure. Marina, how are things at Xandu there?
Well, Zando, we are not really fans of AI being used on our manuscripts. This is not something that we allow. We do, we are careful to ensure that things that we receive were not written or prepared by AI. And many of our authors have taken a hard line on ensuring that no AI is touching their work. So but there are places, obviously, like Nina says, in more nuts and bolts kinds of things. As I mentioned earlier, there are AI tools out there like Grammarly, and they actually do quite a good job of identifying errors. And when you're using them, those kinds of tools for cleanup tasks, they can be extremely helpful, just rooting out those last couple of spelling errors, poor turns of phrase, things like that. That can be a real help, especially when you're in a hurry. But as a general rule, we're taking a little bit of a wait and see. At this moment, AI is not touching Zando books.
Okay, that seems to be the general operating.
Yeah, we don't trust AI yet. It's not there yet, because the problem with AI is that when you ask it for an answer, if it doesn't know, it's going to give you an answer anyway, even if it is not correct. And that is a problem. And, AI is as bad as it's ever going to be right now, right? Every day after this, it's going to get better. So who knows what that answer will be down the road. But at this moment, we would rather rely on people who we know are going to give us the best quality.
Yeah, sure. All right, on the production side, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember where I was hearing this on a webinar, but there are companies that are, I know, using AI for translation. And the other application that I've heard about is looking at AI for forecasting, and also looking at kind of, potentially looking at BISAC codes and trying to use AI to analyze sales data.
All right, okay. All right, and maybe we'll end with this. This was pre-submitted and for Nina and Marina. We're a small house interested in in-house efficiency hacks that outsourcing option rather than just using outsourcing options, as we are a small publisher. Any suggestions?
Well, I can start. I definitely went over some of those things in my
Right,
presentation.
yeah, I thought you did, yeah.
Yeah, I did. Again, like some of these free tools that are out there, that's a good hack. Just helping, kind of clean up toward the end of the project. And, using your existing freelancers to do additional tasks for you. So something that you can do, for example, is that you have them do the copy edit. You'll also have them clean up the copy edit after it has come back from the review for the editor and author. And that's a really nice time saver. And it costs so little extra. Generally, you'll still stay on your budget. So those are some things that I suggest, when you're dealing with a very low budget. And also, if you do use a comp, talk to them. Sometimes tasks they can do for you cost much less than you expect, or sometimes they will do a little bit of a package deal for you where, you can package tasks together and they can do it at a reasonable price for you, especially if they outsource it. So those are a few suggestions I have for the house that really has a tight budget.
Yeah, I don't have much to add. We work mostly with out of house and are very focused on quality too. So I think for us, like that's not where we want to save money because it is a book that hopefully stands the test of time. But that said, I think process plays such a big role. Like any corrections after you start copy edit are just add so much to the complexity. So it's really for us like to lock down the structural edit, make sure everyone is aligned and clear on that, including the authors. So that's I guess the hack that we're trying to prioritize right now. But then, as Marina said, I think there are options out there that are actually relatively maybe not cost prohibitive. And some of these tools, I mean, I agree fully on you can't rely on AI, but there are tools that are using it again, like maybe this company Editrix or others where an expert is involved. It's not just handing it over to AI.
Sure.
That will actually, I think, up with the cost as well, potentially.
Right. Okay, I see by various signs here, we're out of time. So, Nicole, I guess it's back to you.
Yes, thank you, Jim. Thank you, Matt, Marina, and Nina. Excellent information shared during this hour. And thank you to our attendees for spending an hour with us. We hope that the information that was provided was helpful to you and gave you some insights on things that you can do within your company to increase that speed to market where it's appropriate. Be on the lookout for an email from us probably later this week with the video link from today, and there will be additional content coming as well in the coming weeks, including a summary article from PW. And also just want to alert you that we are going to be making a special announcement that we think will be of interest to the publishing community on Thursday. So if you are part of our email community, look out for it there, or you can find the information on our website and on our LinkedIn page, and that'll be on Thursday. Last but not least, we appreciate your feedback about the information that we share. We want to make sure we're providing content that's useful to you. So please, if you could take a minute to do the 2-question survey that'll come up on your screen as you're exiting out, it would be very helpful to us. So with that, if there's any way that we can help you with editorial and workflow solutions within your house and help you get that speed to market for your titles, or if there are ones that, just need a little more something extra, a little longer timeline, whatever it is, reach out to us. You'd be surprised at what we might be able to help you with. And thank you again. Enjoy the rest of your day.